Yo, what's going on, guys? This is Jonathan, and today we are moving. So it's kind of crazy. I don't really make videos like this at all, but I thought, might as well, just because if I made a regular video and I'm in a completely different setup and different set, that it might be kind of weird to just had moved like that without saying anything and kind of giving you a little bit of a house tour. And I wanted to do this for quite some time just because, I don't know, I thought it would be kind of cool to show you where me and my wife live, just because you only get me like sitting behind a camera at my desk talking about Air Force stuff, and you don't really get to see the other aspects of my life that might be really meaningful to me, like art and like all sorts of other stuff like that. So I do have a second channel for that you can find on my main channel, and I'll link it in the description too, where I might start doing more videos like this, and I have a couple on there that are a lot more personal, not Air Force related. But yeah, so anyways, this is where the videos are going to be recorded, and this is a more, which you've seen in videos in the past. But this is where the setup is gonna be. We have a lot smaller of a window, so we're gonna do our best with it. That light is really harsh, but yeah, anyways, just want to give a quick update on it. I don't know if I'm gonna do anything else with this video. It might be really short, it might not be, so we'll see what happens. If there's a next clip, then you know. So I decided to use the clip, and I got everything set up, I got moved in, I got everything hung up, so hopefully this camera angle looks good. Hopefully the lighting looks good, because as you saw in the video when I walked into what is the studio office kind of setup, the window is super small compared to the other window. In the other room, it's actually like probably a quarter the size. It's kind of crazy, like it's super small. So I got everything set up. Hopefully it looks good. If I like this setup, I'm probably gonna continue to use it. And yeah, so I figured out a way to kind of make this an Air Force related video, and I want to talk about moving out of the dorms as an airman. So it's pretty much a standardized process. It might range from base to base, obviously, just because there are different changes between base to base, because you have different commanders and different numbered air forces and the Air Mobility Wing and Space Command and a bunch of different stuff like that, right? So we're going to go over what it is like at Scott to move out of the dorms as an airman to the best of my ability, because I have never lived in the dorms. I was married before I joined the Air Force. I joined the Air Force married, and I've always lived off base. So I do have really close friends that I work with who have moved out of the dorms. In fact, a really good amount of people have moved out of the dorms that I know, so I have the insider details, if you will. And so I'm gonna go over it from what I have gathered and seen in my lifetime going through that. So basically, you wanna move out of the dorms. You're an airman. It's cool. Now, most of the time, you can't move out of the dorms until you have finished your CDCs. I believe in our office, like, you have to be done with your upgrade training, basically, which is all of your TBA tasks. If you don't know what that is, you can leave it in the comments. Like, if you want to ask that question, and I'll respond to it. It's just something that we do in the Air Force. I'll give more specifics in the comments if we do that, but we do TBA tasks, we do CDCs, we do a bunch of other stuff for upgrade training, right? It's usually pretty straightforward though. Once you're done with that, then you start your actual day-to-day job, and you're also trained for that on the job training while you're doing all the upgrade training, right? So it's kind of like a huge mixing pot. And then once you finish your CDCs and stuff, your supervisor's like, awesome, now they're not on my back, trying to get you upgraded. So that's when they're like, you can go to school now, you can start klepping now, you can start going to college now, you can start doing all of those things, including moving out of the dorms. So when you want to move out of the dorms, you get a paper from dorm management, which is just basically approval, okay? It's kind of like a permission slip to go on a field trip. I mean, I've never seen it, but the way that I'm about to explain it is what it sounds like, and so that's what we're going with. So you get the paper, you take it to your supervisor, and you're like, hey, I want to move out of the dorms. And hopefully you have a good relationship with your supervisor. Hopefully you haven't gotten in any trouble. Hopefully you're doing good on your CDCs, or you are already done with your upgrade training, or whatever the case may be. But you get it signed by your supervisor upon his or her approval, okay? After you do that, you go to your first sergeant, or your supervisor will take it to your first sergeant, and it can get signed by the first sergeant or the commander. And that basically is saying, yep, they're good to go. Their supervisor also said that it's good to go, so they're good to go. So once you have that, you take it to dorm management, You get put in for, we call it ditching the dorms. It's like a briefing about moving out of the dorms. I've never been to it, but every briefing in the Air Force is super straightforward with what it's about. So I'm assuming that it's about moving out of the dorms. It's probably about where to live, how to stay living within your means, how much the BAH is for that specific area, aka here in O'Fallon, Illinois, Shiloh, Illinois, Belleville, Illinois, wherever Scott Air Force Base actually is, because there's like 18 cities in this area. And then they probably talk about how to live on base if you want to stay on the base. Like, you have to go to the housing office and probably apply for something there and all sorts of stuff like that, right? So it's kind of crazy. Once you go to that briefing, they put you on a waiting list, right? Or something like that. It's something in that order. You get the paper signed by your supervisors. You might go to the briefing and then go to dorm management, or the other way around. But at the end of the day, you're gonna go to the briefing and you're gonna get put on a waiting list. Now, the waiting list is basically based off of time on station and your rank. I don't know if it's necessarily based on your rank, but the longer that you're on station, unless you get in trouble, the higher your rank will be, basically, because you'll have higher time in service and all sorts of stuff like that too. So once you get on the waiting list, let's say you don't want to move out of the dorms for a long time. You've had your upgrade training done. You've been in the Air Force for quite some time. You're a senior airman, and now you want to move out of the dorms. So if you got on the waiting list as a senior airman, you're practically at the top of the waiting list like that, because it's based on time on station pretty much. So like, if you're an A1C, you just got done with your upgrade training, maybe you're not even done with your CDCs yet, and you've only been on station for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, and you get on the waiting list, you're gonna be waiting a lot longer time compared to somebody who's been there for obviously longer than you. Now, this also might depend. This might depend on what base you're at, because maybe you have to live off base. Maybe they don't even have dorms on the base. I don't know if there's a base that does that, but I mean, it could be a possibility. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. Maybe their dorms are all filled up and they have to give you BAH and they have to send you off base because their houses are filled up, their dorms are filled up, and you have to live off base. So there are certain circumstances where that obviously could change. But for Scott Air Force Base, and from the experiences that I've gathered and all sorts of stuff like that, it all comes down to the waiting list and basically time on station. So there are other circumstances that could affect this. But the fact is basically like time and station. So you basically just wait for that, and then once you get the go ahead, then you just move off base. I'm assuming the ditch the dorm brief has to go over how you're gonna get BAH, how to get enrolled into BAH, when it's gonna start showing up on your LES, and when it's gonna start showing up in your paycheck. And from there on out, then you just kind of go through with it and live out of the dorms and off base or on base or whatever you want to do. So obviously, if you live on base, you're not going to get BAH, which is basic allowance for housing. If you don't know that, it's based off of zip code and rank. And if you live on base, you might actually sometimes be paying out of pocket, depending on what house they end up putting you in. So that is a possibility too. Personally, my preference is I like living off base. I really like that work-life separation. It's really convenient to live on base. It's super convenient to be able to go to work and be there in like 5 minutes, or there's a grocery store on base. Like, there's tons of pros about it, but personally, it's just not the type of person I am. I really like apartments. Once I get out of the military and I go back home, we're gonna actually, you know, buy a house and stuff like that. But until then, it's a lot more convenient for us to have an apartment and pay a little bit out of pocket, because my wife works like full time. So we have the money to be able to afford it and stuff like that. And that might not be the situation for everybody, because when you're married, like, you get a lot more money for BAH than somebody who isn't married. And so somebody who isn't married, if the BAH is off in that area and they make less, you know, money from BAH, like for example, $800, and they're paying $1,200 for rent, they're gonna have to pay a lot out of pocket. So sometimes it's not the most practical situation to be in, and you kind of have to live on base. So I don't know, just my preference though. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know if you want to see a house tour video. I've been thinking about doing it for quite some time. I think I am going to do it for sure, but I do want to get some feedback on that as well. I feel like it would be interesting. I wanted to do it at the last apartment, but I didn't end up doing it. But don't really know why, I just didn't end up doing it. But now that we're freshly moved in here, everything is almost unpacked. I think that it would be pretty cool to kind of show off that setup. So anyways, again, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please leave your ship dates and any questions you may have about my life, about my setup, about the Air Force, about anything in general. just leave it down below and I'll get back to it as soon as I possibly can. If you haven't already subscribed, we're almost at 4,000 subscribers, which is awesome. Super excited for that. And 2019 is gonna be an awesome year. So anyways, thank you again so much for watching, and peace out.